Another situation, and this kind of flows and is akin to the regulatory taking area, arises out of unreasonable development restrictions that are imposed upon people who want to develop their property. That can rise to the level of an inverse condemnation taking, effectively a regulatory taking. A couple of doctrines that you should be aware of and be familiar with this kind of a situation, because this is confronted by particularly people wanting to develop their properties on a fairly regular and frequent basis. Basically, if you are running into roadblocks or barriers for moving forward with the development of your property, the courts have said that your claim for a taking will not be ripe. And by ripe, we mean it's not ready to go forward and be classified as a taking unless you have first exhausted your administrative remedies. So I've now thrown out a lot of kind of tricky words here. Let me just describe and tell you first what are administrative remedies. If you imagine you're a developer or any property owner and you want to get a building permit, the process of filing the application for the permit and going through the Planning Commission, the Zoning Commission, Board of Adjustment, whatever it is, and ultimately to the City Council or Town Board, that's called the administrative review process. And basically what the courts have said is if you're seeking to develop your property and the city is giving, or the municipality is giving you roadblocks and not giving you what you think you're entitled to receive, the court is not going to listen to your claim for inverse condemnation until you have satisfactorily completed your administrative review process. Now, how far through that process do you have to go? Unfortunately, in this area, the cases are all over the map. Sometimes there are some decisions where the courts will say, well, you went through once, but that's not enough. You got to go through a second time and maybe even a third time. In other cases, courts will say going through once is enough. In other cases, if you look at the facts, they haven't even had to go through it all the way. They've had to go through a partial way. And you might say, well, Dan, how can they be so different? Well, all I can answer to that is that the determination in these cases is almost done on a case-by-case basis. Unfortunately, there is no bright line that we can look at to say, yes, you have now satisfactorily completed, the administrative review process. The best I can tell people in that situation is the farther you go through the process, the more likely the courts are going to agree that your efforts have been successful and are complete and you meet ripeness. A doctrine that accompanies this is what's called the doctrine of futility. If you can establish to the court that the actions that you have done to date show that even if you did more effort through the administrative review process, the end result is still going to be the same. You're still going to be denied. There are court decisions that have said, you have gone far enough. We believe that any further effort would be futile, and therefore we will consider your claim, even though you may not have proceeded as far down the path as other cases have required in order to bring your claim for an inverse condemnation. So those claims that you're bringing through the administrative review process for inverse condemnation, basically it's a two-pronged claim. The first prong will basically be to go through the process and then seeking a court order directing that the local authority that is giving you problems or not granting you the permits that you think you're entitled to, ordering that they do so because their actions in denying you what you're entitled to are arbitrary or capricious or not reasonable. As an alternative to that right or to that claim of right, that cause of action, you will also plead then the inverse condemnation so that if the regulation is somehow upheld and you are denied your right to develop the property, you have now also then have your inverse condemnation claim in place to alternatively ask for the remedy of just compensation.